My son wrote to me, "You're not invited to dinner. My wife doesn't want to see you." And this was after I had paid for their new house. I replied, "Okay," and canceled all the payments, deleting 174 receipts. They started calling me, but Before we continue, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important to us. Now make yourselves comfortable and enjoy the story. I smoothed the folds of my navy blue dress, brushing away invisible wrinkles with my hands. It was my standard issue dress, the one I always wore for family dinners. Not too fancy to make my daughter-in-law Marissa roll her eyes, but not so casual as to look sloppy. At 77, I had long since stopped chasing fashion, but I was used to being neat my whole life, even when there was no one to do it for. My son Anthony said dinner would start at 7. It was only 6. I walked through the room, everything in it a museum of my life. A photograph with my husband, James, on our golden wedding anniversary. Little Anthony with the first fish he caught himself. My grandchildren, Toby and Rebecca, at their graduations. These pictures were silent witnesses to a time when everything seemed simpler, warmer, more understandable. I lingered on James's photograph. 15 years he's been gone, but I still consult him in my head. "Eleanor, don't let yourself be taken advantage of," he always used to say. He knew how to set boundaries even with Anthony. I, on the other hand, did not. The phone vibrated. A message from Anthony. I put on my glasses, thinking maybe he was clarifying the time or offering a ride, though he hadn't offered in a long time. "Mom, sorry, can't make it tonight. Marissa is hosting a dinner for her colleagues. We'll reschedule." I reread the message. Yesterday, he had insisted I be there, said there was important news. Something wasn't right. A few seconds later, another message. "You're not invited. Marissa doesn't want you to come." My hand trembled holding the phone, as if someone had doused me with cold water. It was from Anthony's number, from his name. I slowly sank into my armchair, still clutching the phone as if it were the last thread connecting me to something real. Memories flashed before my eyes. Anthony holding onto my skirt in kindergarten, shyly asking for advice on what to give a girl, then bringing Marissa home to meet me, so happy. And now this cold, short text like from a stranger. Was it a spontaneous decision, or just the first time they had said what they had long thought? How many times had their smiles been strained? How many invitations had been out of politeness? I glanced at a brochure on the table, an advertisement for the River's Edge residential complex. Their new home. A 3-story townhouse on the river with a dock. The house for which I had made a down payment of $120,000 6 months ago. "Mom, it's an investment," Anthony had said. "There will be a corner for you there too." My corner? I smirked to myself. It seemed to have long since disappeared. I remembered how we were at the bank signing the deal. The manager had looked at me in surprise. "Are you sure, Mrs. Wembley? It's a large sum." And I was sure. James had left me enough. I wanted to help my son. It was the right thing to do, right? Then there was the car, safer for the children. A private school for Toby, he had special needs. The kitchen remodel, Marissa deserved it. She worked so hard. Each time I silently wrote the checks, and each time I believed I was doing the right thing. And what did I get in return? Scheduled holiday calls, short, perfunctory visits. And now this text. Short, cold, without apology. I stood up and went to my bureau. The top drawer held all the papers, all sorted into folders. Bills, checks, documents. The Anthony folder was the thickest. I opened it. A check for $20,000 for a business he had abandoned after 6 months. Payment for Marissa's courses. The roof repair on their old house. Toby's car insurance. The loan for the kitchen. Private dentistry. I no longer remembered how much I had paid for everything, all for the good of the family. And now I wasn't even welcome on the doorstep of the very house I had paid for. The phone vibrated again. My heart skipped a beat, but it was Rebecca, my granddaughter. "Grandma, are you coming today? I miss you." My hand froze over the screen. Rebecca had always been different, sincere, even when everyone else seemed to forget I existed. She found the time. I wrote, "Sweetheart, it seems your parents have decided it's better for me to stay home." The reply came almost immediately. "What? Dad himself said you absolutely had to come." So she didn't know. I imagined her confused, standing there where I wasn't wanted. In the house that was bought with my money. My gaze fell back on the folder. I had really thought all this time that if I were generous enough, they would respect me, love me. But in truth, I was just renting their attention, and the lease had expired. I picked up the phone, dialed the bank's number. "Good evening, Fayetteville Community Bank. How may I help you?" "Good evening, this is Eleanor Wembley. I need to consult about automatic payments from my account. Of course, we'll need to go through identification." While the employee asked the standard questions, a plan formed in my head. Calm, cold, clear. "Everything is confirmed. What would you like to do?" "Stop all transfers and debits. Everything without exception. And cancel the power of attorney issued to my son, Anthony Wembley." Pause on the line. "All transfers? You have a lot of them." "I know. Stop everything. Today. I'll come in person tomorrow to formalize it." "All right, we'll temporarily suspend them. But we can't completely cancel without a signature." "Suspend them now." While she was typing, I looked at James's photo. "You were right, James. You can't let them walk all over you, even your own." "Ready, Mrs. Wembley. All 174 regular transfers and payments have been suspended." 174, I repeated quietly. I couldn't imagine there were so many. After the call to the bank, I sat in my armchair for a long time, not moving. My hands were trembling a little, but inside I was calm. As if a burden I had been carrying on my back for years had suddenly slipped off. I didn't cry. I just sat in the silence of my apartment, among the photographs, the old furniture, the smell of vanilla and paper. For the first time in many years, I felt that I had done something for myself. Not for my son, not for my grandson, not for the sake of peace in the family, but for myself. The phone vibrated again. A message from Anthony. Rebecca must have said something to him, but I didn't open it. I wasn't going to explain or justify myself again. I opened a new message and wrote just one line. "Now pay for everything yourselves. Good luck, freeloaders." My finger hovered over the send button. Honestly, I didn't want to sound rude, but they had been the first. I didn't start this coldness. It was they who decided that I was superfluous even in the house I had bought. They chose to be strangers. I just accepted it. I pressed send, then turned off the phone. Silence. Calm. Outside the window, the evening was beginning. A soft light fell on the windowsill. I stood up, went to the closet, took off the dress I had put on for dinner, and put on my housecoat. I put the kettle on. The kitchen was cozy, smelling of apples. I took out an old album, flipped through the pages. My wedding with James, Anthony in his father's arms, us at the country house on a trip in a cafe. So many years, and all of them in these photos. I looked at myself, young, busy, always doing something for someone. I had put everything off, my desires, my dreams. I was always helping someone. First my husband, then my son, then his family. And myself last. James always said, "Eleanor, don't let people use you, even your loved ones." Before he died, he made me promise to take care of myself as I had always taken care of others. I nodded then, but in my heart I thought, who will need me if I don't give myself? Now I understood. I needed myself. I closed the album, went back to the kitchen, made tea, and took out a book I had long wanted to read. I kept putting it off. Either Toby was sick, or Marissa needed money for courses, or there were important family events. Now I could read when I wanted, could live as I wanted, without expectations, without requests, without the endless role of a rescuer. In the morning, I woke up without an alarm, without calls, without a to-do list. I had slept through the night without pills, without valerian. I had a simple but enjoyable breakfast, looking out the window. The day was clear. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel a heaviness in my chest. I arrived at the bank 20 minutes before it opened. It was quiet on the street. I stood in front of the door in my coat, with a folder in my hands. People passed by. No one knew that this was a special day for me. The day I was taking back my life. When the doors opened, I went in. The girl at the counter smiled politely. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I need to see Mrs. Howard," I said. Linda Howard had known each other for almost 30 years. She had handled our affairs with James. She was always precise, attentive. A few minutes later, I was sitting in her office. She hadn't changed much. The same neat hairstyle, glasses on a thin frame. "Eleanor, good morning. I'm aware of your call. All transfers have been suspended. Did something happen?" I looked her in the eye. "I want to cancel everything forever and annul Anthony's access to my accounts." Linda took off her glasses, began to wipe them with a cloth. She always did that when she was thinking about something important. "We've known each other for a long time. Are you sure? It's a radical step." "I'm sure," I said calmly. She nodded, sat down at the computer, and began to type. "All right, I'll prepare the documents. It will take a little time. You really do have a lot of automatic payments." While she was preparing the papers, she handed me a thick folder. "These are printouts of all your regular transactions for the last year. Take a look. Maybe you'll want to leave something." I opened the folder. The first was the mortgage on Anthony and Marissa's house, $3,800 a month. The house where I didn't even have the right to spend the night. Next was the insurance on Marissa's car. The premium model she called a necessity so as not to be ashamed to drive clients, $850 a quarter. A membership to a private club where Marissa was making connections. A dental specialist for Toby, he had an overbite. Rebecca's college tuition, the only thing I didn't regret for a second. Each line was a conversation, a request, sometimes tears, sometimes blackmail. "Mom, we're in a bad way." "Grandma, but you want me to be no worse than the others." Then again, repairs, a club, tickets, a tutor, a gym, trips. I just sat and leafed through it. It was the path of my naivety, page after page, how I step by step gave myself into the hands of those who did not appreciate it. "Here are the documents," Linda said. "Look them over and sign if everything is correct. And the power of attorney revocation form." I signed without a doubt, without a tremor. "If you need help, advice, call." She looked at me. "You look different today." I smiled for the first time in a long time, sincerely. "I'm fine, Linda. Finally fine." After the bank, I went straight to the lawyer. Francis Whitaker, our old family lawyer. He had handled James's affairs while he was still alive. His gray beard had grown thicker, his glasses thicker, but his voice remained the same, calm, thoughtful, respectful. "Mrs. Wembley, what a meeting." He smiled, rising from his desk. "What brings you here?" "I want to change my will," I said simply, "and set up a lifetime trust so that my assets can no longer be touched without my knowledge." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask any unnecessary questions. "Family circumstances?" he asked gently. "Yes," I answered shortly. I didn't want to explain everything again, not now. I just wanted to take a step. "All right. Then let's see what exactly you want to provide for." The next hour we spent with documents. Francis explained what an irrevocable trust is, how rights are transferred, how to minimize risks. I listened, asked questions. Surprisingly, I had no anxiety, no doubts. Only clarity. Only the desire to protect myself. Myself, not someone else. When we finished, I looked at my phone. 15 missed calls from Anthony. 7 from Marissa, 3 from Toby. Not a single one from Rebecca. I wasn't even surprised. Rebecca always understood when to wait. "Shall I prepare the papers by the end of the week?" I asked, rising. "Of course," Francis nodded. "And Eleanor?" He hesitated for a second. "Yes, James always said that you are much stronger than you seem." I'm glad to see that he was right. I nodded, restrained. I didn't want to cry in his office. On the way home, I stopped at the store. For the first time in a long time, only for myself. I bought the products that I love, not thinking about whether Anthony likes this, not remembering what snacks Toby prefers. Only for myself. A small thing, but it felt so proud. There was a surprise waiting for me at home. Rebecca was sitting on the porch, hugging her knees. She saw my car and immediately ran up. Grandma, I've been calling you all day. Why didn't you answer? Because I had an important day, my dear. Help me with the bags. She took the bag and we went into the house. Dad is in a panic, she said immediately. He says you've blocked everything. What happened? I put the kettle on. Everything was calm without fuss. I didn't rush to answer, just put the products on the shelves. Yes, I have stopped all transfers. I'm tired. I can't do it anymore, neither morally nor financially. Rebecca froze. Did something happen? I turned to her, looked her straight in the eye. Your father canceled my visit to the family dinner yesterday. He said your mother didn't want to see me in their house. In the house that I bought. Rebecca turned pale. Her eyes widened, her mouth fell open. What? That can't be. Dad said all week how important it was for you to come. I showed her the message without words. She read it, her hand covering her mouth. Oh my God. I didn't know. Honestly. That's awful, Grandma. How could they? I put a cup of tea in front of her. And I thought that's enough. For so many years I've helped, paid, saved, and in the end I'm not even needed at their table. So it's time to reconsider everything. Rebecca was silent, her lips trembling, tears in her eyes. You know, she said quietly, I've seen it all for a long time. How they use you. Especially Mom. I tried to talk to Dad, but he always defended her. Said I didn't understand adult matters. I nodded. Somewhere deep down I always knew Rebecca saw everything. She just didn't interfere. Maybe she didn't want to get involved, maybe she thought I would figure it out myself. And now, she asked. They have so many expenses, the loan, Toby's school. Let them figure it out themselves, I answered calmly. They are adults. Anthony has a good job. Marissa is a successful realtor. Enough. The phone vibrated again. Anthony. I turned off the sound. You're not going to answer? Rebecca asked cautiously. Not today. Let him think. Maybe for the first time in a long time. She looked at me with a kind of special attention. You know, Grandma, I've never seen you like this. I haven't seen myself like this in a long time either. I smiled. We drank tea, talked about Rebecca's work, about books, about plans. Just talked. Without requests, without manipulation, without tension. This is real intimacy. This is what a family should be like. When Rebecca was getting ready to leave, she hugged me tighter than usual. Are you sure you're okay? Maybe I should stay. Everything is fine, my dear. Honestly. You go, don't worry. Already at the door, she stopped. Grandma, I don't want to get between you. This is your. I'm not taking sides. I understand, I nodded. This is between me and your parents. You have nothing to do with it. After she left, the house became quiet again. I checked the mail. Among the letters was a notice of a failed attempt to charge Toby's card. Already. Quickly. It seems my grandson was living on the edge. I put the letter aside, sat by the window. The phone continued to vibrate. I didn't pay attention. I just took out an old photo album, opened it to a random page. Us at a picnic. Still young, James, Anthony, little Marissa with a 90s hairstyle, the kids still in diapers. Smiles. Then I really believed we were a real family. When did it all go wrong? When did care turn into an obligation? When did love become a financial attachment? I went to the mirror in the hallway. The woman in the reflection was no longer young, but there was a hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there for a long time. A calm inner strength. Time to remember who you are, Eleanor Wembley, I said quietly to myself. The intercom buzzed. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be Anthony? I went to the door, looked through the peephole. No, it was Lorraine, my old friend, with a basket in her hands. Homemade jam and cookies. I opened the door and without a word she hugged me tightly. Lorraine hugged me as if I had just returned from the hospital. Quietly, tightly, without extra words. I felt my eyes sting. I wasn't crying but my chest ached. How I had missed this simple human warmth without conditions. I called, you didn't answer. I decided to come myself, I was worried, she said, walking into the kitchen. I turned off the phone. A little family force majeure. She put the basket on the table. Homemade cookies, a jar of jam, fresh bread. Marissa again? She squinted, as she always called her. I nodded. Not just her. All of them together. Anthony, they all. We sat down. I told her about the message, about the canceled dinner, about the fact that I was no longer transferring them a penny. Lorraine listened in silence, only pursing her lips and grunting at the right moments. When I finished, she took my hand. Thank God, she breathed out. I've been watching this for so many years. I wanted to say, Eleanor, wake up. But I knew you wouldn't listen. I wasn't offended. She was right. I didn't want to see it myself, I said quietly. They used you, especially that favorite daughter-in-law of yours. She never respected you. And I kept paying, kept forgiving, for the sake of peace in the family. We sat for a long time over tea, talking like two women who had long understood each other. Not as a mother and a grandmother, just as women tired of being convenient. In the evening, Lorraine left, promising to come again soon. I was left alone. The phone rang again. On the screen, Anthony. I didn't take it. A minute later, a message from Marissa. Eleanor, we need to talk urgently. It's gone too far. You don't understand the consequences. A smirk escaped on its own. When it comes to money, everyone expresses concern. No one wants to understand what it's like to be superfluous in the family that you have supported for decades. I didn't answer the calls or the messages. I just turned off the sound. The morning began unexpectedly. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. And on the threshold, Marissa, as always perfectly coiffed, with a box of cakes from an expensive pastry shop, stood with an expression as if nothing had happened. Good morning, Eleanor. May I come in? I silently stepped aside. Marissa entered like a hostess, looked around, and placed the box on the table. We need to talk. She sat down, her hands folded on her lap. Her voice was soft, adult, as if explaining something to a person with deviations. What happened is a misunderstanding. Anthony shouldn't have written that message. We were on edge. I was planning an important dinner, there were clients. I needed everything to be perfect. And I could have ruined everything? I asked calmly. No, you misunderstood. She hesitated. It's just that sometimes you're not quite up to date with modern etiquette. You joke awkwardly, you wear old-fashioned things, she suggested. She nodded, feigning sympathy. And that's a reason to not let your husband's mother into the house that she paid for? Here her face twitched, the mask almost slipped, but she quickly recovered. Let's not escalate. We're all having a hard time. We're in a crisis. The lone Toby work, Anthony is on the edge. I'm tired. We're all tired. And me. I asked. Have you ever in all these years asked how I was? Eleanor. Again with that patient, cold tone. I am no longer transferring you any money, I interrupted her. Not for the house, not for the car, not for Toby's sports club. Not $1. She froze for a few seconds, as if she didn't believe it. You can't. We're a family. A family is care, respect, attention. I haven't seen that from you in a long time. I'm just an account, just a card. I'm a function for you, not a person. You'll regret it, Marissa spat out. When you're alone, when you get sick, who will help you? I calmly stood up. I'll manage. As I always did before you, before your convenience. Myself. She also stood up. She left the cakes. Apparently in her head, she still believed that this could restore trust. This isn't the end, she said at the threshold. We're still a family. No, I said. You are just relatives. And a family is something else. When the door slammed behind her, I didn't feel triumph, only a quiet relief. As if the last attempt to manipulate me had failed. I brewed tea, put my favorite buns on the table. Not the ones I bought for Toby, but the ones I love. It smelled of cinnamon. It was quiet. I was finally living by my own rules. The next morning, Francis Whitaker, the lawyer, came. He was, as always, punctual. In his hands was a folder with documents. Calmly, thoroughly, without fuss, he laid everything out on the kitchen table. Everything is ready, Eleanor. Here is the new will and the lifetime trust agreement. I nodded without looking, signed each page clearly without a tremor. The main part of the property is transferred to an irrevocable trust, where you are the sole beneficiary during your lifetime. After your death, 40% to your granddaughter Rebecca, 10% to charity, the rest at your discretion. Anthony and Toby, the minimum share is required by law. Marissa is completely excluded. I nodded again. That's right. If there are conflicts with the family, call, he said, carefully gathering the papers. But honestly, you've done everything competently. It will be difficult to argue. Thank you, Francis, for everything. He lingered, looked at me attentively. You know, in 30 years of work, I rarely see people who decide on such a step. Most drag it out until the very end. But you have freed yourself. And that commands respect. I walked him to the door, then stood in the hallway for a long time, my hand on the folder with the signed documents. This is what freedom looked like. Papers, signatures, but most importantly, an inner boundary. A simple enough. The phone rang again. Toby. I hesitated but still answered. Hello. Grandma. His voice was strained. Is it true? You've cut everything off. It's true. But why? I haven't done anything bad to you. I heard not aggression in his voice like Marissa's and not hysteria like Anthony's, but rather confusion, fear. He didn't know how to live without support. Toby, you're an adult. You work, you're independent. Why are you still dependent on my card? He was silent, then said quietly, I'm used to it. It's always been this way. You've always helped. And have you ever thought about how I felt? He was silent again. It's funny to you, I continued. But in the last 10 years, I've only received 2 calls from you without a request for money. 1. Happy New Year. The second when you needed a certificate for college. Everything else. Grandma transfer. Grandma pay. Grandma solve it. I didn't think about it, he said hoarsely. Exactly. No one thought. You just got used to it. And only when I said no, everyone got alarmed. My card is blocked, he exhaled. I can't pay for my apartment or my car. I'm in trouble. You live alone, you work. These are your expenses. Learn to cope. Talk to the bank, cut your expenses, find a side job. It's hard. Life is hard in general, Toby, I said calmly. Especially when you've lived on someone else's back all your life. He sighed, was silent for a long time. I gave him time, didn't interrupt. Grandma, he finally said, do you really think I'm that bad? No, I answered. I think you're used to good things. Used to me always being there, always solving things. And I can't anymore. I don't want to. I'm almost 80. I want to live a little for myself. And if I hadn't asked for money, he said quietly, would you still love me? I felt a lump in my throat. Of course, Toby. I love you. But I'm no longer willing to buy your attention. My warmth is not for transfer. He was silent. And then he said something I didn't expect. And if I look for a side job? Whitaker called me, said you asked him. They offered me an internship in his office sorting papers, delivering documents. I agreed. Really? Yes, I want to try it myself. I smiled very quietly but genuinely. Now that's an adult conversation, Toby. Thank you, Grandma, for everything. And I'm sorry. He hung up. I was left alone with a cup of tea with the phone turned off. But my soul was not empty as before. It was light. Not because everything was suddenly settled, but because I had finally stopped living in debt to everyone. That same evening, Rebecca came by, as always, without warning. She just knocked and walked in as if it were her home. I was sitting in the kitchen, leafing through a travel company catalog. She noticed it immediately. Grandma, are you going somewhere? I'm thinking of going to Italy, I said simply. Your mother always wrinkled her nose when I talked about it. Not the right time, not the right expenses. And now I've decided, if not now, then when? Rebecca laughed. That's right. My God, Grandma, you should have done this 20 years ago. Why did you always put it off? Because there were always more important things to do. First Anthony's school, then work, then Toby, then your mortgage, then Marissa's renovations. And I kept waiting for my time to come later. But later never came. Rebecca sat opposite me. And now I'm free. You understand? I don't owe anyone anything. Not a single dollar. Not a single explanation. She looked at me with a new kind of respect. You look different. Stronger. I feel different too. I no longer serve, I live. We drank tea. Rebecca told me what was happening at home. Mom is hysterical, she said, stirring her sugar. In the morning she went to the bank, wanted to get access to the account back. She thought you were just being emotional. They, to put it mildly, sent her away. They said everything was legally sound and now she is nobody. I told her so, I answered calmly. Dad is walking around like a beaten dog. He has 2 states now. Either he's angry or he's sitting and staring at one point. It hit him hard. I didn't gloat. I even felt a little bitter. This is my blood, my son. But I knew if I didn't hold out now, everything would repeat itself. They sold Mom's car, Rebecca added. The expensive one bought with your pension. Dad took out loans to cover urgent payments. He says Marissa is also looking for a second job. I sighed, not with relief but with understanding. Everything was falling into place. When there are no free safety nets, you have to stand on your own 2 feet. You know, Rebecca said quietly, I don't envy your freedom. I respect it. You've earned it. Thank you, my dear, really. She touched my hand. Just promise you'll go. Stop living on leftovers. You deserve a beautiful life. I want you to see how people really live. Not through pictures and albums. I nodded, and at that moment I already knew. I would go. When Rebecca left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. The catalog had pictures of Venice, Tuscany, Rome. James had dreamed of showing me Italy. His grandfather was from there. We always said, when we retire then. But retirement came and his health no longer allowed it. Now I could. I took out an old atlas. There was a note in the margins. He had once circled his favorite routes. I ran my finger over the map lightly as over a life. The doorbell pulled me from my thoughts. On the threshold stood Toby, disheveled, with circles under his eyes, in the same backpack he always took to school. He looked not like a grandson but like a lost teenager. Grandma, can I? I nodded silently. He walked into the house, took off his jacket and sat in the living room. He didn't beat around the bush. I have problems, he said immediately. Big ones. The cards are blocked, the bank is demanding payment, the rent is due, the car is in the impound lot. I can't handle it. And what do you want? I asked calmly. He looked at me like a cashier in a store to whom someone had come without money. With an empty gaze. Money? I'm not asking for a loan, I'll pay it back. Toby, I interrupted him. You're an adult now. You work. You know how adults live. They pay for their own apartment and for their mistakes. He lowered his eyes. I can't handle it. Because you've never tried. He was silent. We sat in silence. Then I said, I won't give you money. But I gave your number to the lawyer. He has a small job. Archives phones. Start with that. You won't earn a lot right away, but you'll start to breathe on your own. He looked at me for a long time. In his eyes was something new. A mixture of resentment and gratitude. You still love me. Very much. But now not with dollars but for real. The morning was quiet. I woke up early without anxiety. I made myself breakfast, not rushing. I brewed coffee, put cookies on the table, opened the window. Fresh air, the quiet noise of the streets, the smell of spring. I knew there would be a conversation today. Anthony had called the day before. Mom, we want to talk. The whole family. Calmly, without scandals. We're coming at 2. I didn't object. I was no longer afraid of anything. At exactly 2 the doorbell rang. I looked out the window. 3 cars by the house. On the steps Marissa, as always elegant in a coat and heels. Behind her, Anthony, Toby, Rebecca and another 6 people. Marissa's parents, her sister and her husband, some acquaintances. I didn't even recognize everyone at first. I opened the door. "Good afternoon," Marissa said loudly, as if announcing something important. "We are all here to discuss the situation. As a family." I looked at her calmly. "Come in. Only you, Anthony, Toby, and Rebecca. The rest, no." She froze. "But these are all close people. This is support. We'll decide together." "This is my house," I interrupted her. "I decide who comes in. Either the 5 of you come in or no one." Silence. Everyone exchanged glances. In Marissa's eyes, displeasure. Anthony confused. Toby doesn't look me in the eye. Rebecca stands to the side, as always, quietly. "All right," Marissa said through gritted teeth. "Let's go." They came in. The rest remained outside. Some demonstratively walked away to the fence, some remained standing by the gate. As if it were not a conversation in a house but a trial. In the living room they sat down. I was opposite them. We were silent for almost a minute. "Mom," Anthony was the first to speak. "We want to understand why so suddenly, why you canceled everything. We could have talked. Why close everything at once?" "I didn't close it at once. I was silent for 20 years, I said calmly. "And all this time you took and didn't ask how I was. And now when I said enough, you got scared. Not for me, but for your accounts." "We weren't scared," Marissa intervened. "We just think it's incorrect. A family should help each other." "A family, yes, but not a one-way street." Marissa threw up her hands. "You've ruined everything because of one message." "It wasn't one message. It was the last straw. The end. And the beginning was many years ago, when you started to think that I was obligated." Anthony lowered his eyes. Toby nervously fiddled with the sleeve of his jacket. "We thought it wasn't hard for you," Anthony exhaled. "You always offered yourself." "I offered out of love. And you took it as an obligation." "Mom," Anthony's voice got louder. "But you can't just take and cross everyone out of your life." "I'm not crossing anyone out. I'm stopping paying for a love that you don't feel. And I'm stopping sitting in a house where I'm not invited." Here Marissa couldn't stand it. "But this is the house where your son, your grandson lives. You paid voluntarily, and now you voluntarily stopped." She jumped up. "We're losing the house. Toby can't pay for his studies. Everything has collapsed because of your resentment." "Not because of resentment," I answered quietly, "but because of the truth. Because I no longer let you use me." Marissa straightened up, crossed her arms. "You'll regret it. When you're left alone without help, without grandchildren in your old age. Better alone than in a circle of those who only need my money." Silence. Anthony pressed his fingers to his forehead. Toby looked up for the first time. "Grandma," he began, "I agreed to work at Whitaker's. I'm going to be an intern. I want to do it all myself. Honestly. Thank you for pushing me." Marissa turned sharply to him. "What? You knew?" "Yes," he said. "I think Grandma is right. We went too far." Rebecca came up to me, quietly hugged me and whispered, "I'm with you. Always." I looked at my grandchildren. One is learning to live in a new way. The other is already an adult, calm, real. "This is my family. I'm not kicking you out," I said. "But I've set boundaries. This is not a war. This is an adult conversation. And I will not go back to where I am not respected." Marissa stood like a statue, her lips pressed together, her eyes angry. "Let's go," she said to Anthony. "The conversation here is over." He stood up, not looking at me, in silence. They left. Only Rebecca lingered for a second, hugged me tightly without words. When the door closed, I felt neither victory nor bitterness. Only silence and lightness. 6 months passed. The Italian sun warmed my shoulders. I was sitting on the terrace of a small restaurant somewhere in Tuscany. In front of me was a glass of white wine, a basket of warm bread, and a plate of pasta. No fuss. No one demanding anything. No one calling with the phrase, "Grandma, I need it urgently." Lorraine was with me. She had, as promised, come with me. Now she was writing something enthusiastically in her notebook, recording her impressions every day. And I just sat, looked at the vineyards, breathed in the air. I can't believe we're here, I said aloud. I'm 77, and I'm finally living the way I always wanted. James would be proud of you, Lorraine answered, raising her glass. To you, Eleanor. To us. I smiled. In the last 6 months, a lot had changed. Anthony and Marissa had at first tried to pressure me, then to plead, then they got offended. A couple of times, Anthony came with a bouquet and the words, "Mom, I'm sorry." But every visit ended with, "And now maybe you could." And I would refuse again. Over time, they realized it was forever. Marissa, as Rebecca told me, quit her previous job and became a rental agent. She says she has to hustle. They sold the house, moved to a smaller apartment. And that, strangely enough, was good for them. Without a safety net, they began to grow. Forced but still. Toby works at Francis Whitaker's, helps with cases, prepares documents. Sometimes he calls without asking for anything, just to ask how I am. I feel that for the first time we are really talking. Rebecca and I talk almost every day. She insisted that I not put off the trip, helped me choose a route, booked the tickets, even bought me a new suitcase. She said, "You're living now. Do it beautifully." I remembered how as a child I dreamed of going somewhere where there was silence, delicious food, and no one was in a hurry. And here I am. Not for someone else, not out of politeness, not on credit, but simply because I have the right. Lorraine and I walk through the cities, go into shops, try cheese, laugh, take pictures of each other. And every evening I understand that I am not alone, because I am finally with myself. This evening, I wrote a message to Rebecca. "My dear, Italy is a miracle. Come someday. I'll show you the very street where they make coffee like in the movies. I love you very much." I attached a photo. Me against the background of vineyards, in a light shawl with wrinkles, with tired but clear eyes. Alive, real free. In the evening, I went out onto the balcony. Lorraine was reading a book. I just looked at the sky. It was a warm, deep blue color. Somewhere below, crickets were chirping. I smiled. I had made it. Yes, I had spent decades, hundreds of transfers, thousands of silent concessions. But I had managed to say, enough. I had managed to choose myself. I had managed to live a little, not as a convenient woman, but as the mistress of my own life. The phone vibrated again. Anthony. I didn't answer. Maybe later. Or maybe never. Right now I have more important things to do. To live. And now write the word justice in the comments. It's important for us to know if our viewers watch the videos to the end. Give it a like and subscribe to the channel. There are even more real-life stories ahead.